Yeah, what's up? Um, Today I wanted to kind of just bring you out to the forest with me to check out some things, and I wanted to talk a little bit about photography and cinematographic composition. Um, Went out for a mountain bike ride, so I thought it's a good chance to bring you out in the real world and just talk about it and show things. In this particular shot at the moment, I've got some light behind my head to create some contrast and focus you right in the middle with the leading lines. So kind of all the way up here, you see the white light behind me. And then sort of if I move a little bit back, you got my bike in the foreground. That's sort of leading you the line from the bottom corner and bringing it towards me. There's many different approaches to photography and cinematography, but shots like this where I'm static, cinematically speaking, is kind of a nice and easy way to approach composition. So, and you know what's the best part about these fall days? Not just the colors, but the sky is like one huge softbox, creating this super nice and cozy lighting and atmosphere just everywhere where you go. Oh, same shot and just slightly different framing can make a huge difference too. Like this video I'm shooting with 24-70 and the last shot was at 24, so now I'm at 70, and the thing that it really makes the people in particular is the compression on people's face. When you start shooting longer millimeters, of course there's special applications, but when you shoot too long, people's faces start to get too flat. And then on the other hand, if you shoot too wide, like in the last shot, the faces tend to become more rounded. But between like 50 and 135 mils, you get the real nice sort of a little bit of compression and a lot of depth in people's faces, and that's really important. Okay, so framing, probably one of the most overlooked aspects of photography, or I guess the motivation of framing. Usually when you want to create interesting photography, there needs to be some intention behind the composition or framing. Everyone likes to talk about rule of thirds and the golden rule and all that jazz, but something that tends to be often overlooked is just the motivation of framing, which of course tends to be quite important. That's not explained in one video, but I'm trying to sort of, I think, over the next few videos at least, I'm gonna talk about it and keep it as an ongoing subject to explain how photography should be framed, and especially when I'm filming myself like here, it actually makes sense that I talk about photography framing, because all these shots tend to be still unless otherwise built. Even with cinematography, there needs to be motivation behind movement, right? And that's kind of the same thing I'm trying to explain here for photography, but cinematography you sometimes hear it talked about, but here it's sort of something with photography that just goes untalked. But at the end of the day, I think photography is really just as much about the motivation and the movement and intention. When framing shots like really wide ones, I tend to focus usually on creating three-dimensional look. And to demonstrate that, I've kind of placed here the bike in front of me. Now it may feel like it's cutting off my legs here a little bit, which is then why you would move the subject perhaps a little bit to the other direction. But to create a sense of depth, it's tends to be easier sort of at wide angles if you have something in the foreground as well as in the background, which is of course one of the basics, but really placing an object in the front can be a really good way to see actually physically how different it is and how much it means to practice. To explain further, please let me get this bike out of the way. So you see, just moving it out of the way, it sort of makes a big difference. Not necessarily a bad one, but it certainly changes the motivation and intention of the shot. Now perhaps the shot is a bit more about just me and my surroundings and a bit less about the mountain bikes and whatever else is happening around here. Anyways, I think again, just placing yourself in the center of the frame tends to be the easiest way to catch people's attention, and or your subject in general. And while it's kind of something that you don't want to be doing all the time, it's also a good way to actually really like pop out the subject in the frame. That's the fall lighting at its best. And why am I framing it like this? If you look at here on the right, you see that there's a little bit more space than there is on the left, right? And sort of the forward of the bike is actually leading, which means that it needs a bit more space. So usually when you're framing things, you want to leave a bit more space towards the direction where the subject is actually moving. It usually tends to make everything feel a bit nicer and more natural. It kind of leads you towards the direction and makes you feel like you actually know a little bit of what's going to happen, which is sort of a motivation for framing. See, if I had this bike a bit more forward, it tends to feel like it's actually now starting to want to move. You want to see what's happening in front of it, but you don't really know. Here it feels like you kind of know what is about to happen. And it makes you feel more satisfied with the framing when you see the result afterwards. So small things like that can actually make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. Now if I was to go and hop on the bike and just go, you sort of know that, okay, that's good, you know? So I guess the message and intention behind this video is just that you should get out there and just practice whatever it is, photography, mountain biking. Just go out there and do it, and try to actually also think about what you're doing. I think there's a really good quote I heard somewhere saying that only perfect practice makes perfect. So it doesn't matter if you practice 10,000 hours really bad without intention. You're not going to get great, but if the practice is perfect, you're going to get perfect. Thanks for tuning in, and yeah, drop down a like and a subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and see you in the next one.